Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. Welcome back to Eagles football. And man, Adam, the week is started, and the Eagles will practice for the first time today. But there's a lot of Eagles transactional news that we have to get to.
Wow.
Maybe some news that surprised some people in the last 24, 48 hours. We'll talk about it. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the impact some of the players involved in these transactions will have on the team going forward. And then I like this. We're going to take a little look to end the podcast around the NFC East, which you promised, we both agreed, and you promised in the preview that we did with Greg Cosell in July. And then in August, I should say, going into the year, you said the NFC East would not embarrass itself this year. And so far, you're right. The NFC East.
Why did I say that? I don't even remember saying it. Did I?
Well,
say
I
that?
remember we did the listen. We thought Dallas and Philadelphia would be good, right?
Yeah.
Like they have been, and we thought Washington and New York would be respectable, maybe formidable, and one of
I
those
know
teams
why.
might even be surprising. We thought.
I really like Daniels. I was very high on him. I didn't expect this. I mean, I if you really went through the roster, we're going to talk about Washington in the third segment. You go, wow, how are they doing this? Well, elite quarterback play or close to it that could elevate you. You know, that could elevate your team. But when you look at the roster, you go, this is not a very good roster. It's okay. I mean, I give the coaching credit to them. We'll talk about them. They're a fascinating team. They really are. It's been a great story for all the suffering that the Commando fans have gone through with the former owner Daniel Snyder, to go through all the crap for the last 25 years. And then to finally get it to settle down, the team's not an embarrassment, to be ahead of schedule. No one thought much of them. You know, the over-under for them was 6.5. I thought, yeah, I think they'll get 7. They're not going to get more than 7. Oops. They might get 10 or 11. We'll see what happens. But I just thought Washington would be better. And with Malik Neighbors, unfortunately, he has a concussion, but they were going to be better with Malik Neighbors. There's no question. You put him out there with the receiver group, they got more speed, and they addressed their offensive line. So I thought it'd be a more competitive division. I'm a little surprised at the way it's gone so far.
Yeah, I would agree. I did not foresee the Giants flying all the way out to Seattle without Neighbors and without Devin Singletary and being able to beat the Seahawks. So that was a good win, and we'll get to the division a little bit later in the podcast. From one conversation about elite quarterback play, or really good quarterback play, especially for a rookie that Washington is getting, the Eagles come back from the bye. And, you know, it's a good time to refresh, good time to hit the mental reset button. They're going to get some players back healthy, which is really important for the offense. But they also have a team coming into town in the Cleveland Browns, Adam, who are getting the opposite of elite quarterback play. I mean, they are getting absolute terrible quarterback play. And even though we're going to discuss the Browns a little bit later in the week, this is more about the Eagles. I just want to put this out to you. Are you surprised at all that as bad as Deshaun Watson has been, that they are not going yet to Jameis Winston? Are you surprised that they're going to stick with him?
No, because I know what's happening here. So
Okay.
this is my opinion. This is not a report, but I know a lot that's been going on behind the scenes. This sounds crazy, but it's one coach for another team explained to me, who has ties to the Cleveland staff. Let's just say they bench Watson, which is way overdue. Watson should be playing. He's awful. I mean, he's a shell of what he once was. Let's say Winston goes in there and tears it up just like Flacco did. Watson's got $92 million coming over the next 2 seasons. $92 million fully guaranteed, $46 million. He's not playing with any confidence. Look, the best thing to do would just to ride it out with Winston, who could get streaky. We know that. He when he's on a roll, man, he's got Flacco in him where he could spin it. But as someone from another team told me, if he plays well, it would be hard to go back to Watson. And I said to the Scott, I'm like, well, wouldn't you want to go? Why would you want to go back to Watson?
Right. That's my point. Yeah.
Right. And he said to me, he goes, here's why, because they have a contractual obligation to try to see it through. I'm like, but don't you owe it to the players? The players know. And to the fans, there's poor suffering Browns fans for years for the crap they put up with a quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think the team believes in Deshaun, the players. I mean, you're just watching them play. I don't know that they believe in the quarterback. I think at that point, you just have to be like the Broncos and be like, I'm going to have to eat a lot of money. Hope Jameis Winston can give us a spark, maybe do some good drafting and developing, or sign a 1-year bridge next year while I eat a big dead cap. But it's hard for me to think right now that Deshaun Watson's going to be salvageable. Can he be streaky? Absolutely. You haven't even seen a
Anything.
sign yet
Nothing.
of
Nothing.
one good solid quarter to say, all right, it's still in him there, you know?
He looks so sharp. All the specialness of 2020 when he looked like Mahomes, where he'd scramble. He was less of a runner, he's more of a scrambler, and then somehow come back to the middle and
Yep.
like he knew where everybody was. His processing was so good back then. Now it's terrible. We're gonna outline all of their issues, not just him. You'll be surprised that their defense has been disappointing. We'll talk more about them later in the show, but before we end the show. But the bottom line is they're really struggling. The Eagles are, depending which book you look at, an 8-point favorite. Wow.
Yeah. Crazy. All right, so let's talk about the Eagles because they're making some moves on their own. And big, obviously, news came in Tuesday afternoon. I think almost wonder why it took so long, but they cut ties with linebacker Devin White. You know, it was trending this way ever since he wasn't going to be their starting linebacker. He was inactive. They just found no reason to put him on the field, held on to him, and finally cut the cord on Tuesday afternoon. I can't say I'm surprised at him. I definitely think that when you look back on it, as we said when they signed him, this was a very risky signing. There's a lot to like about the athlete, but as Tampa Bay illustrated last year, there wasn't a lot to love about the actual game itself and the ability to play that position fundamentally sound and do what a guy like Vic Fangio especially would want them to do. And that's why he got beat out. He was not one of their 2 or 3 best linebackers in training camp.
Yeah, and by the way, for the people who said, "Oh, there's a conspiracy theory that he had the most snaps at ILB," yeah, that's true, but that didn't mean he performed well. By the way, Dean, it wasn't even close. Den training camp. I remember going to football 4. I said once the reporters were kicked out of, they were not allowed to watch practice anymore after training camp was over. I remember saying to Mike Gill, I said, if Nakobe Dean is not starting week 1, there's something really odd going on. It makes no sense. Dean clearly beat him out. And then it happened. Dean did win that job clearly. It wasn't even remotely close to even end training camp. And then the 2 weeks leading up to training camp, remember there's no 4th preseason game. Clearly, Dean took the ones. And the other thing is Burks got healthy over that knee injury. So you don't need any more than 4 ILBs active. And Vince Zimmerman's a special teams guy. So Devin White was not going to play. No, folks, you don't keep a guy on the roster because you think he could be an edge rusher. White didn't take any snaps as an edge rusher. For White to have been an edge rusher, you would have to do what Washington did with Jamin Davis. They smartly figured out, okay, Washington inherited Jamin Davis. They were looking for a different way. Unfortunately, didn't work out. They wound up cutting him, but they felt, okay, we'll at least try it with Jamin Davis because he's explosive. It didn't work. But Vic Fangio had no interest in having Devin White be an edge rusher. And if you're with us on Patreon, we told you what the scouting report was on Devin White in March. It was bad.
Yeah, it was not
tape,
good.
and everything you and I had on this was bad. By the way, and this is really interesting, we got this on Tuesday. The transaction that was turned in to the league, the Eagles and Devin White reached non-injury settlement. They owed him $4.991 million, just under $5 million. That's fully guaranteed. His base salary of $2.25 million became fully guaranteed week 1 because he was on the week 1 roster. However, I'm guessing that either White asked to be released, or his agent did, or both, because this way he could play somewhere else, and because he was not hurt, so they reached a non-injury settlement. Would tell us that this is an agreement in the league, so he with the club and the player, so now he could go play somewhere else. Here, he was never going to be active. Remember, we said a couple weeks ago, don't be surprised if he never plays for the Eagles. No, we didn't know they're going to cut him,
Right.
But you don't play 6 ILBs unless 2 get hurt. He'll never play, and he never wound up playing for them.
Excellent. Couple of thoughts that just piggyback off everything you said, which was dead on. One, this was clearly coming when they signed Oren Burks as a 6th inside linebacker, which is like, how many inside linebackers do you need? You only played 2 at a time most of the time. He was the veteran. So we knew once Oren Burks was on the 53, off the practice squad onto the 53, that Devin White was very unlikely to see the field unless they had like 5 injuries. Okay. That's their veteran backup that they're going to use, who can stabilize if there's instability here with Dean and Bond. All right. Number 2, no conspiracy theory here, because we saw this happen last year. Terrell Edmonds was the same type of signing. They signed him from the Steelers. He was a former first round pick. He was a tremendous athlete. He was good on a good defense around him, but individually, he was not that special of a player. He was learning the Eagles defense for the first time. So he got every first team rep and OTAs and almost all of training camp for them to at least get him acclimated to what they do, just like Devin White played in a Todd Bowles defense, totally opposite than a Vic Fangio defense. So they gave him every single opportunity to learn the defense, to prove he was better. And in the end, they decided that he was not. So that's why he's not there. Number 3, your best point of all. And I want people to really understand this, because I think sometimes, and I get it, because you're seeing Bond go from outside to inside. So people are like, why can't you're struggling in the pass rush. He's a good blitzer. Why can't you stick him on the edge? As you said, he didn't practice it. So you're asking him to do something he's not even spent time doing. B, when an inside linebacker in a Todd Bowles defense gets a lot of sacks, like he did first 2 years when he was all pro, he's not necessarily beating offensive tackles. Todd Bowles puts a lot of guys at scrimmage. He breaks down protection schemes. He drops linemen and rushes linebackers. And what often happens is, and we saw it 2 weeks ago, right? You get free ride to the quarterback because nobody accounted for you. That's not taking away from Devin White. You have to be fast. You have to be athletic. You still have to have a nose for the quarterback. And you probably have to every once in a while beat like a running back or a tight end kept in for pass pro. But that is a totally different art than being on the edge, where you have to use your hands in the pass rush. You have to have a plan. We always talk about, does an edge rusher have a plan for the pass rush? Meaning hand usage, rip move, club move, speed to power, bull rush. Those are not things that Devin White had, even when he had 9 sacks as a Bucs linebacker. He was just really fast, could play in the gaps, get through that gap quick, and sack the quarterback. So to say, why don't you just move him to edge rusher and see what he can do? Even if he practiced it, there's no guarantee that he has the skill set to do what guys like Brandon Graham and even Bryce Huff or any of Josh Sweat do on a regular basis. It is a different responsibility. So it's not apples to apples. It's totally apples to oranges. And the Eagles never even gave it apples to pears. The Eagles never gave it any thought. And by the way, Devin White may not want to do that. He's an inside linebacker in his mind, I'm sure, somewhere. And sure, I don't know if he wants to just move to the edge and be a pass rusher.
And by the way, the last good year he had was 2021. I mean, he was unbelievable in 2020. You were talking about the year that he had 9 sacks.
9 sacks.
He looked like this new breed of inside backer. Athlete, physical, blow plays up, 15 tackles for a loss. He looks, I mean, you were like, you could see why he was the top 10 pick. 2021, he made the Pro Bowl, also good. And then the regression really started in 22. In fact, I remember some people said, why did they pick up his 5th-year option when he played so badly? But you figure 1 year, maybe it's an off year. 23, he got bottomed out. He got benched. Really bad. Tape was awful.
Yeah.
And now I know sometimes maybe a new lease on life. It's to the point, how did Vic Fangio, I know Howie's pretty good at, hey, what do you think of this player? I've talked to coaches work, for the Eagles over the years, as you have. I just can't imagine Vic Fangio would have said, yeah, I think this is a good idea, but we'll never know.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much coaches get involved with the finances of it. So Vic might have said, yeah, like bring him in.
Just all about tape. Just
right,
tape.
Right.
Do you agree with the tape or not? Is the tape good or bad? Can we, this guy's got explosive. He was good years ago, but it's not like he's 35. I mean, he's young enough.
Right.
But the tape was so bad last season. He freelanced and did his own thing. It's just, the Bucs didn't want him back. So this is not good. Now, again, it was $4.991 million. We don't know exactly how much the Eagles are now going to be in the hook for, but they did reach a non-injury settlement. He's not hurt. It was strictly they saved money on it. We just don't know what the number is, but he's no longer an Eagle, and now they're down to just 5 ILBs on the 53.
Yeah, and we did talk about Devin White on the last podcast as becoming part of a wave of signings the last 2 years that Howie has made, especially on defense, that have not worked out compared to the signings that he had been making when they were on the build up to their Super Bowl team in 2017, which it seemed like almost every signing wound up working out. So he's going to have to go back to the drawing board and really look at like schemes and players and what the tape shows, and maybe get a little more consult on why a guy's not back with the team that he was on. I mean, that was a lot of money, as you just mentioned, to give to somebody who was benched last year and not playing well.
Yep.
All right, to some better news for the Eagles, guys who are going to be on the team, or at least we expect soon. 21-day practice window was opened for the safety Sidney Brown, second-year safety, and rookie wide receiver Ainias Smith. So this basically allows them, they're still on IR technically, this allows them to practice with the team, and I believe they have 21 days, so 3 weeks to be able to practice before the team has to make a decision on them. Now, that doesn't mean they need to take all 3 weeks either. If guys look good this week, then maybe a roster move can be made by the time they play the Browns.
A couple things. So Smith had I don't know. Do you remember what his injury was? I forget.
Wasn't it a foot?
Well, he had the stress fracture procedure done in the spring. That's why he didn't participate in OTAs. But I don't remember what this one was. But anyway, they put him on IR. Sidney Brown was on reserve PUP. They don't count against the roster.
Mm-hmm.
But and by the way, the window started Monday. That transaction was turned to the league on Monday, so it's 21 days from that. So yeah, within that's the best point of all here. And we've seen teams do this. And I'd be stunned if Brown was activated this week because he hasn't practiced since January. In fact, he tore his ACL against the Giants on January 7th in week 18, weeks in game 17. And so they have this window. And what would happen is what we've seen with other teams, though, is like the guy's been out a bit, but he looks great, as you were suggesting. We've seen guys come back the first week that they're eligible. So yeah, they don't have to wait till 21 days, but they do have to make room. They're not on the active. They're not on the 53. They're on the reserve list. So they'd have to create room on the roster. Now they cut Devin White. So is somebody going to be ready this week? Let's see. You never know.
Well, that's why I wouldn't be I'm kind of thinking that you cut Devin White. I think Sidney Brown, I agree with you that it's only 1 week, not good enough to get him in on defense, but I feel like he can help on special teams in a limited special teams role just to get his conditioning back and get back on the field. I only say that because he looked all throughout training camp. He's working a lot. I mean, it looked like he was in good shape. Obviously not game shape, but I remember when Rodney McLeod was coming back from his ACL and you could see him working with a trainer throughout camp. He didn't look like spry yet. It took him a little bit to really get into the end of camp, I think. Yeah, I think with Sidney being young, being very way more than 8 months now removed from, right? It's got to be more than 8 months removed.
Well, yeah, it was. Well, let's put it this way: January 7th was when he had the injury, when he suffered the injury against the Giants.
Right.
Typically, once the swelling goes down, you have the reconstruction.
Yeah.
February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's exactly 9 months.
Right.
So it's about right.
Plus White is a defensive player and you don't need another linebacker because you already had enough. So that it kind of opens up the door to move Sidney Brown to the 53, as long as they like what they see in practice and then use him on special teams.
Yeah, that's a good thought to get, because he's been running. We saw him running in August. So that's not the issue. The issue is just getting his timing down. Now, we mentioned on our previous show, we went over the type of role he could have to be the third safety initially, but understand he's a box safety. He's not a range safety. So it's that Gardner Johnson, people want him to replace Gardner Johnson. I'd be stunned if that happened. They don't play the same way. It just doesn't make any sense.
No way. I mean, if you're going to go with a chronology here, you're thinking get on special teams first, right? Work your way into some sub packages in a big nickel where you're probably, like you're saying, in the box, either or on a tight end in zone. They used him that way a little bit last year. You don't want him in man coverage yet because he did not perform well in that regard last year. But then maybe by, who knows, November, then if you feel like he's ready to supplant Reed, maybe he can do that. I don't know, but I would just try to think if he's playing all right, you're trying to get big nickel and 3 safeties on to give yourself some better tackling in certain situations.
Yeah, he's not a nickel defender. They tried it last year. That's not his deal, and that's where DeJean will come in. Yeah, that's where DeJean will come in. But yeah, so it's good. I mean, that's good. That's good news for them that they're starting to work. We'll learn more later in the week. In fact, I think we talked about this last year. They actually have to be on the injury report. This is something that happened last year. It was new. I love that the league made teams do this, so we could get an idea if they worked or not. Because before, all you would know is when they were activated into the window, you would have no idea if they actually worked any particular day. Now they have to do that. So we'll talk. This is great. We'll talk more about this on our next show.
Right. So Ainias Smith was an ankle that he went on
Okay.
IR with. So he'll
Hmm.
be back. We'll see. There's certainly an opportunity for him sometime to come in and try to help this team from the slot position. Maybe, Adam, if Cooper DeJean is going to be your full-time slot sooner than later, and it may not be Sunday, but it'll probably be soon, right? Then you may not want him having also return punts and being your starting slot corner. So that's where
Top
not,
receiver.
yeah, starting slot. No. If I'm saying if Cooper DeJean is your starting nickel corner,
I see
right?
what you mean. Good.
Right. You may not also want him having returning punts.
Okay. Right. Well, okay, but here, okay, let's get Ainias Smith in there. Ainias Smith, again, because you just talked about DeJean as a punt returner.
Right.
Ainias Smith can return punts. He's
Hmm.
what they call a power slot. What does that mean? He's really, really strong, like really strong. He's not fast. He's got good short area quickness, we're told by a scouting source. So, AKA works for an NFL team who did his area. So he he's also a gadget player, end arounds and so forth. There's a lot you can do with him. It's unfortunate that he had the stress fracture, so he didn't practice in OTAs, and that kind of set him back. Then, unfortunately, had the drop issue in training camp, which came out of the blue. We were told he never had a problem with drops in college, so that was
Right.
kind of news to everybody.
Right.
But he can now. One thing now you need to understand right now, we're if assuming Brown doesn't have a setback with his hamstring, he's playing this week, and assuming Devontae Smith passes through the protocol fine, they would have 4 receivers available for this week. I'm not saying Ainias Smith will be back this week, but you've got Paris Campbell, who is out of elevations, correct? If we're not mistaken.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You got John Ross, who's got 1 elevation.
Hmm.
He's taken 1. He's got 2 left. Danny Gray and Phillips has not been on the roster. So Ainias Smith, to me, would be their 5th receiver. There you go. You don't have to do anything when he's ready, though, when he's ready.
Right. I didn't think about that. The fact that Paris Campbell is out of elevations could mean he's the guy that gets signed to the 53
True.
this week, because they're still, even with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown expected to come back, they're still short, right? Because you really
You have to
only
have
have,
5. You have to have 5.
yeah,
You only have
you
4 right
have,
now.
yeah. So that makes more sense, actually. Because I don't know that Ainias Smith will be ready to step in there and play on the offense right away, as you just
Exactly. In fact, that's why, to me, on your point, now that we'll explain this, Paris Campbell would, if you, when you're out of elevations and you want to sign him off your practice squad, that counts against your roster where elevations do not.
Hmm.
So that's a problem, because then you got to cut somebody. Just going through the possibilities right now. Okay, so they cleared up a spot, as we said earlier, for Devin White, that they got a spot empty.
Hmm.
But then once the other 2 guys, once Sidney Brown and Ainias Smith are ready, you can't. Do they really need 6 receivers on the roster if everybody's healthy? No.
No.
So, but who would be the guys who you think they might look at releasing at this point?
Um,
Ricks?
well, I think it's pretty interesting. They're probably not going to release Gates, but it's interesting that they didn't go to him when they needed a backup center.
Yeah. Yeah, that was
It would
interesting.
probably be somebody on defense. I mean, we'll have to see. We'll almost have to see, like, is somebody hurt the way things have going. I'm sure the Eagles are thinking this too. It's like every week or two, somebody else is getting hurt. So it could just be a 1-for-1 type of transaction if somebody has to miss a few weeks. But it did stick out to me that Nick Gates, did not get the center nod when Cam Jurgens had to take a quick break there. So he's one possibility. And they have depth. I mean, they're obviously going to stay deeper at linebacker than because of special teams. Maybe Tristan McCollum if Sidney Brown is back. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's
Special
gonna
teams
be interesting.
player. Well, on your point, they also have Maddox, who can move to safety. So they have they have this. Once Sidney Brown's back, they're fine at safety. You need to have 4 available to you at some point. Gardner Johnson, Reed Blankenship, McCollum, and then Sidney Brown, and also Avante Maddox. So you're on your point. It then becomes down to special teams. McCollum's part of their special teams units, important guy. So you have to get through that. And then here's the guy, though. Byron Young I don't think he's dressed yet.
I
The guy
think
they
you're right.
claimed up.
I think you're right. Now, it would be rare for the Eagles to cut ties with a D lineman, even if they thought they can get him onto the practice squad, but because they like to be deeper there. But you're right, he has not dressed yet, so that's something to watch.
Hmm.
Last thing on Ainias Smith, Adam, he can help the Eagles in two ways, I think, when he's ready to get on the field. One, I think we've seen that with Johnny Wilson, even though they liked using him inside outside and trying to at times playing him inside, he's not really equipped for it. As an inside receiver, which Ainias Smith has always been, right? He has an understanding of choice routes, of two-way routes, of the route tree from the inside. Like he will play that interior slot receiver position, and he doesn't have to learn things on the fly. And it's more natural than a 6'7" guy who doesn't separate well, not even from the outside, but especially on the inside, where it's a whole different type of route tree. So Ainias Smith not only gives them a more reliable interior presence as long as he's catching the ball, but I think that allows them to work with Wilson a little bit more as an outside guy and not have to force feed him as both.
Yeah, and we know that Wilson's one thing he can do is he can block. That's really when he's active. I assume he'll be active for a while. That's what he does. But I guess it's sort of like a good problem to have once these guys are ready to go, because then it makes the roster better and interesting roster choices. And I'm just fascinated to see what happens here, particularly in the secondary. And we'll talk more about this on our Friday show with DeJean. I'm very curious about how they're going to deploy DeJean and Maddox, because again, Maddox could be a backup safety. Where, by the way, every snap he took in training camp was at safety. Just
Yeah.
about.
Do you think there's any chance that Maddox doesn't survive? I mean, it's,
I know he didn't. I
hasn't
know
played
he's
well.
not played well. Yeah.
Plus, it's hard. You're probably not going to put him on special teams. And if you're a backup defensive back, usually you're on special teams. It would be dangerous with his injury history to have him on on
Yeah,
any
it's
of the punt
fair. I mean,
returns.
he's really be emergency safety if somebody got hurt. But right now, he's guaranteed $2 million. The guarantee on the full guarantee is 875,000. Not a lot of money to walk away from. Yeah, it's fair. We'll see. I mean, he as I understand, he had other opportunities, but nothing better than the Eagles gave him for
Yeah,
rolling money.
yeah,
So that's a good point. It's they're going to have some roster challenges, and see, you mentioned before we move on. You look at now again. DeJean is real. Now Vic, it's funny. Vic Fangio, I love how he describes corners. Nichols, he says Nichols not a corner, right?
right.
It's a defensive back. He doesn't call it a corner. So if you don't count him as an outside corner, this year, no outside corner, right? In the future, though, the Eagles think he can do it. But right now, you got Slay, not going anywhere. You got Mitchell, are your starters. Isaiah Rodgers is healthy. He's looking better. You got Ringo. There's your four. And who am I forgetting is outside corner?
Isaiah, wait, you said Rogers, you said Slay, you said Mitchell, you
Mitchell.
said Ringo, and
Yep.
Ricks. Is Ricks
It's
still on the
five.
team?
Okay.
Five, yeah.
And so honestly, I guess they have to keep Rex as the fifth, just for short. No,
Well, we didn't say Cooper. So if Cooper comes back, then
he's
he's
not
one.
playing corner though.
Oh no, you're right, because you're
Oh,
saying
that's what I
just
just said.
nickel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just
yeah,
nickel.
yeah.
Vic doesn't
Yeah.
look at his corners. Don't say it. He'll
I
yell at
know.
you.
I'm just saying because he could play outside. It's but yeah,
They
he is
haven't done
nickel.
that. Yeah, they haven't done that with him.
They
Probably
haven't
not.
done it. You're right. You haven't done it yet.
Hmm.
All right. The injuries we did mention: Devontae Smith concussion, AJ Brown hamstring, Lane Johnson concussion. They don't practice till today for the first
Yep.
time. We thought
Yep.
maybe they would do something on Tuesday just because you're coming back from the bye. You haven't really you didn't go into the bye on the best note, but I guess they played it straight and they gave the guys the mental rest that they need, and they'll pick it up today and see how it goes. But those guys will get a chance, and you hope that everything goes well in practice this week.
Yeah, it's funny. Andy would do the infamous, or not so infamous, but the 10-10-10 practice when the players, when they were here, when Andy was the Eagles head coach, Andy Reid, they would do the very short practice coming out of the body, 10-10-10. It was so annoying because when we were allowed to go watch practice before some of the reporters locally violated the trust between Andy and us.
Mm-hmm.
But we could watch it, and it was like half an hour, 45 minutes, just to get on that Monday, and then they'd have Tuesday off and practice Wednesday. But yeah, I'm one thing with the Browns coming in. I'm interested to see what the plan of attack here, assuming you just mentioned the guys coming back, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, because Cleveland is very deep at corner. Now they have a lot of injuries. They are one of the most injured teams in the National Football League.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides of the football. We'll talk more about their injury situation on Friday, but they got all sorts of problems. But Cleveland, when they were really good last year defensively, they're not playing as well defensively this season. I'll be interested to see what the approach is by Jim Schwartz here.
Definitely. Uh, we're gonna get into Cleveland's doing some different things this year defensively, especially Jim Schwartz. Um, Jim Schwartz not known for blitzing normally. Cleveland, one of the higher blitzing teams this year, so there's some
Crazy.
interesting things
Yeah.
this year. Hey, listen, credit Jim Schwartz because we ripped him at times for not being adaptable, for
Oh,
basically throwing the same defense out there all the time, right? So finally he caught up to him and said maybe I should adapt. And I do think there's a little bit of a symbiotic relationship between how piss poor the offense has been and why the defense has been bad. I mean, when you're asked to carry the load like that, it can be difficult, but you're right. The injuries have also hurt them as well. We'll get into that. So yeah, the big question, just as we finish off practice this week is, today, does Nick Sirianni put him in pads coming back from the bye, or does he try to do one of those Wednesday walkthroughs and, ramp him up? I mean,
we
we'll
should,
see.
don't you
I,
think?
I would be in pads if it were me, but it ain't me.
I that's maybe part of the problem with the bad tackling, these Wednesday walkthroughs. In fact, yeah, they haven't been in pads that we know of. So we'll take a look at that. But that's it's going to be interesting to see because if you look at the Eagles' schedule coming out of the bye, we always look at just like coaches do. They look at everything quarterly and series of games. They got the Browns this week on Sunday here. They're at the Giants, look a little better. At the Bengals, who could score. Their defense has been bad, but their offense is back to normal, man. They rolled against Baltimore, but their defense was bad. And then Dougie P comes in. He's off the schneid, and they finally got a win, but they got all sorts of problems.
Absolutely. All right. We will talk the page, and we'll turn on and get a little bit to the NFC East. Before we go on, Adam, I know we're all hoping, we're on pins and needles, hoping the Phillies can extend this series. We'll get to the NLCS, not just the
Yeah.
NLDS, NLCS, and then hopefully to a World Series. And if it's the NLCS, if they can advance, imagine this, right? You know what they've done against the Padres in the playoffs. There has been bedlam. We know that. Or it could be the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani, the greatest show in baseball, would be coming to town if it's the Dodgers. And that is some must-see TV regardless. And I shouldn't say must-see TV. It's must-see live action, and you're going to want to get down to the ballpark to go see those games. And if you do that, you're going to want to use Game Time. Game Time is the best ticketing app available. You hear us talk about all their great features like Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to only show you the incredible deals that you get on seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets to find the one that you like. I love their super deal. It's their highlighted deal that gives you the best value. And for wherever you are in your venue, there are other tiers of great deals as well. And it's just a very user-friendly experience. 2 or 3 taps on the app, and you can get your ticket at the price that you want, at the price you're willing to pay. No hidden fees. They have the all-in pricing. That and the view from the seat is what I appreciate most about the app. And don't forget, with Game Time, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. All right. They have event cancellation protection. They have job loss protection. They've also got the lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. Folks, this isn't just for sports. It's not just for Phillies or Birds games or wherever. It's for concerts. It's for comedy shows. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Adam. What a division so far it's been. And by the way, real quick before we even get into that, we've got a lot coming up this week. I don't know if everybody's caught it yet. It's been up on the platform, but Derek Gunn had an awesome interview with former Eagles cornerback Lito Shepherd. Lito, everybody
Lito,
remembers
as he told me, he said, "No, it's
Lito,
Lito." I'm
yes,
like, "All right,
it's
dude, got
Lito.
it, Lito."
But everybody knows the Boz Skaggs song that used to blare over the
Lito,
league stage from when he.
yeah.
That's right, when he had a big big interception. But Lito had a lot to say about, being an Eagles fan now, watching the games, how defenses played in the NFL, some of his highlights. It was a really fun interview because Lito is a real character. So everybody needs to catch that gun on one interview. It is really fantastic. Of course, we've got Inside the Tape coming up with Greg Cosell this week. Even though there's no game for the Eagles, we're going to go through the Browns and what to expect and pull out some all 22 clips to illustrate what they've been going through this year. We will have the pregame show. We've got our Ask ITB live stream Wednesday. We had our Ask Greg Cosell for Patreon folks on Tuesday night. Went really well. So just a lot going on. And again, all of our pods, everything that we do is up first and with no ads on our Patreon platform. So make sure you go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to sign up and get everything early and ad free.
And later this month, we've got a Chalk Talk coming in, which is great. And then we had Brian Hoyer for last month. It was great breaking down Fangio because he was with the Bears with Vic, what it's like to go against him. And then Ask an Eagle Live, man, that's coming up. And we had Quentin Michael on, was phenomenal. So we'll have that to you later this month.
There you go. All right, we'll take a look around the NFC East. We talked about the Commanders. They are 4-1, and they have bought themselves some, I don't want to say cushion or currency, but I mean, they're clearly, with Jaden Daniels, a team that you have to respect. They have playmakers. Terry McLaurin's getting the ball. I think Zach Ertz, I've watched his games. He doesn't have huge stats, but he has come up as you would imagine. Zach Ertz has contributed some important catches for them, especially on third down. Adam, their veteran leadership is underrated here. They have a young rookie quarterback, but they get good, solid production from like the Tyler Biadasz to stabilize center, mentioned Ertz, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, right? McLaurin's a veteran. He's been around for a little bit. So as they're learning with their young quarterback and some of their younger players, even on defense, they have a nice little veteran nucleus who's been there, played a lot of games, Dorrance Armstrong, right? Who can help this team. And I think that's made a pretty good difference for them.
Yeah, if you look at their offensive line, Cosme's a stud. He got a big contract extension. He's been a great story moving from tackle to guard. He's the right guard. Andrew Wiley won a Super Bowl with Kansas City. He's probably below average. They finally have pulled the plug on Cornelius Lucas, the journeyman tackle. They went to Brandon Coleman. Some teams look at the guard. In fact, I know that they initially looked at Coleman as a guard, but they moved him to left tackle. You mentioned Biadasz. Nick Allegretti, another guy, came over from Kansas City. I don't know what their fascination is with these chief linemen are just very average, but they protected Daniels, and Daniels is a supreme processor for such a young player. Everyone I talked to in scouting before the draft said, "Oh my, this kid sees it. He just gets rid of it. He knows where the ball needs to go, and he doesn't hesitate." And that helps, man, because it makes your offensive line look better than it is. Peyton Manning, if you talk to people graded Manning's tape and the Colts tape when Jeff Saturday was there, Saturday was very good. But really, the rest of the line was very average. But a really elite quarterback play, a very good quarterback play, can make your offensive line better than it is. Other than McLaurin, they don't have much at receiver. Zacchaeus got benched. He's now their fourth receiver. He started the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then they signed Noah Brown. Brown then took his job. Then Brown got hurt. Christian McCaffrey's younger brother, Luke, out of Rice, who we saw at the Senior Bowls there, is now starting. But yeah, the pass target group, if Zach missed a big touchdown down the seam, he just couldn't get it, by the way, in the last game.
Yep.
But Ben Sinnott was their second-round pick. We saw at the Senior Bowl, at a great Senior Bowl week. Mariota's a backup, just came off of IR. Brian Robinson's gotten off to a very good start. Eckler's his backup, came off of a concussion 2 weeks ago and looked great. Jeremy McNichols, who's a journeyman, who's a really good pass protector.
He's got like 5 touchdowns the last 2 weeks.
I know.
He's got,
I was just going to say, he's been doing great. It's hard to pick him up for fantasy, though, because it's probably a little fluky. But
yeah.
You got the two great defensive tackles. Dorrance Armstrong comes over from Dallas, obviously knows Dan Quinn. William Farrell's been hurt. Fowler played for Dan Quinn there. Johnny Newton's coming back from the broken foot, then a procedure, then he got hurt again. He's back. You mentioned Louvu, who's a really underrated player. Wagner could still play, future Hall of Famer. You got the secondary, which they're not good at corner at all. Like that's where you're gonna make your money. It's thrown against them. Safety, they're good. Nickel, they're good, but it's specials. This kid Seibert, this journeyman kicker, is doing really well. It's not a very talented roster. Here's what I'll say. Yes, they've played well. They benefited from a very good schedule. Now, if you look at their schedule coming up, They're at Baltimore on Sunday. Don't have to travel very far. I assume they bus it, but maybe take the train. But that'll be challenging. I know Baltimore's defense took a powder last week against Cincinnati. It was a defense optional game, but
Yep.
Ravens won it. Great game, but it was incredible. They host the Panthers. Okay, that's a give me game. They play the Bears. They host the Bears the following week. Their defense is phenomenal. Their offense is shaky. Then they're at
But
the
but
improved
they are
Giants.
the Bears are starting to learn that they can win games if they run the ball, limit Caleb Williams. I mean, DeAndre Swift had 2 really good weeks in a row. Put that game in the hands of your defense, make it tough on the opposing quarterbacks, and then just have Caleb Williams make a couple of special plays as he learns. Because the last 2 weeks, I know they've played a cupcake schedule the last 2 weeks, but they've looked a lot more functional offensively, and that could be a really interesting game, Washington and Chicago.
Yeah, they're loaded at receiver, tight end, offensive line's okay, but yeah, so we'll see about that. And then the Cowpokes in that delayed game for like an hour and a half Sunday night. Somehow they won, but listen to this schedule. They host the Lions this week. They're at the Niners. They're at the Falcons. Kirk Cousins went off last week. Then they host the Eagles. Good luck to the Cowpokes.
Wow, can you
Wow.
imagine if they're 3-5 getting ready for that Eagles game? My gosh, that would be crazy.
That's a toughie, man. That to me, and this division is again a little better than we expected.
Yeah.
They lost Marshawn Nealon, who was their third edge rusher for the season. It looks like potentially with that meniscus surgery.
Right.
Then you got Tank Lawrence, who's got the midfoot sprain, a bad one, and then Michael Parsons is week to week with a high ankle sprain. I mean, I give him credit. That was a hell of a win at the Steelers, but they got all sorts of injury issues on defense.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think they'll be any worse than 4 and I guess what would that be? 4-4 going into that Eagles game, but you never know. They've struggled, so we'll see. And by the way, going back to the Commanders real quick with their schedule, you mentioned the Baltimore game, which will be obviously a very tough game, but then Carolina, you said Chicago, New York. I mean, they go 2-2 in that stretch. They're 6-3. And if they go 3-1, holy cow. Then
I
you're really
know.
going to
Oh
start to look
boy.
at that team, which by the way, they could go 3-1 in that stretch. It'd be
Sure.
very, very interesting.
Their over under win total is 6.5. I mean, look, they were the team that people would ask about. Oh, could this be the next team? But you look at the roster, you go, I don't see it. I mean, it's now again. Look, they could lose 3 out of 4, but you're going to learn a lot about this team over the next 4 games.
All right, before we round it out with the Giants, let's pause real quick to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter makes sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. And not only get a great deal, a great experience, a great car buying experience, which is rare these days. So please save yourself some sanity. Go to website, SkyMotorCars.com, or just hop into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA. See Brett Shoulder. You will definitely get the hookup there. All right. The Giants, we'll finish it out. I am as shocked as anyone that they went out to Seattle without Neighbors and without Singletary and won. But there's one thing that hasn't surprised me. You didn't see it in the first 2 weeks when they were really learning under their new defensive coordinator, Bowen, right? You didn't see it the first 2 weeks, but you've seen it now. They have a very good pass rush. They have some of the best pass rushers in the league with Dexter Lawrence, with Brian Burns. You're getting another, Kayvon Thibodeau, not great, but certainly good, coming off of a double-digit sack last year. You expected them to be able to hit the quarterback a little bit, and they're doing that. Now, I did not expect them to give Seattle an issue, but it doesn't surprise me that their front four, Adam, can wreak some havoc on some quarterbacks.
Yeah, and you saw 2 weeks ago, Watson, I don't know how many, he must have taken seemed like 50 sacks. He got crushed by the Giants in Cleveland. Obviously, Watson helps that because he doesn't see the rush anymore. He just doesn't, he has no feel for it. But, overall, the Giants and Daniel Jones, by the way, really playing well. And on your point about Seattle, they did it without Malik Neighbors. I could understand Devin Singletary's not, he's just an average back, but Tyrone
Right.
Tracy, their 5th round running back out of Purdue, is phenomenal. He's clearly earned himself some playing time against Singletary, behind Singletary. But Daniel Jones is doing the job, and Darius Slayton had a phenomenal game. The Eagles know him very well. He came in the league with Jones in 2019, and Wan'Dale Robinson's healthy. He's doing a good job. Their line, they finally addressed their offensive line with John Runyon Jr., Greg Illuminor, who we've talked about before in the show, Greg Van Roten at the University of Pennsylvania, still playing. John Michael Schmitz in his 2nd year. So they actually have more talent. They got it wrong on Evan Neal. Oh, well, but they're not worrying about that, and they're a better football team. Yeah, they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're certainly more competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, to your point, I didn't think the line was going to be that much better, but some of those guys have played pretty well. So to be able to go out to Seattle and control the line of scrimmage the way they did and give Daniel Jones some time to make some plays. And now you're starting to see Daniel run a little bit too. And that was a surprise. And look, we saw the Giants beat the Eagles last year, and we know that Washington gives the Eagles fits every year, right? I mean, it seems like if not one game, both games are always down to the wire or a loss, like 2 years ago that broke their little unbeaten streak that they had going on to start the year. So this ain't going to be easy. So the Eagles got their work cut out for them, but obviously it starts with making sure that they beat Cleveland on Sunday. Adam, is this a game? I normally say a win is a win, but I want to close that out on this. I kind of feel like you have to dominate the Browns. Like, you can't leave the link with like a 14-10 win and feel really good about yourself.
I don't know about that. First of all, if Schwartz gets their pass rush right, I mean, their blitzing is way. I mean, he 35% is a lot for him. So if Garrett has a great game, I know he's playing with really messed up foot. He's got all sorts of problems with it. Jordan Hicks has been hurt. He's missed time. JOK's been hurt. Denzel Ward has had concussion issues. Delpit got hurt in the last game. Both their tackles have missed time. In fact, Jack Conklin hasn't played yet, the right tackle.
Yep.
Posick, their center, got hurt. He might have a high ankle sprain. So they got all sorts of injury problems. Now, on that point, what you're saying, yeah, they should just beat him because these guys are all beat up. But their defense has got a lot of man, they are super deep, but the run defenses have been good. They're super deep at corner, but they've got injuries.
I guess I go back to like last year, right? They lost once they started losing a couple of games in a row. They lose to the San Francisco 49ers, then they lose to Seattle, then they lost to Arizona, right? And you're like, holy cow, what's going on with this team? Thank God the Giants are on the calendar, right? And then Christmas Day, they beat.
I hear you.
That's the game they won, right, on Christmas against the Giants.
No, yes,
right, but it was a win that felt like a loss, if you remember. After the game, you're like, I don't think the Eagles got right, and they certainly didn't, because then they wound up, doing poorly after that. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think the Eagles kind of need a get right game, and the Browns got to be the sacrificial lamb here, or else if you're coming out of this game 14-10 win, you're probably not feeling that confident about them finding themselves.
We got to see what it looks like, though. I mean, we just got to see what it looks like.
Fair.
You got to see how it plays out. And
I'm putting the cart before the horse.
Cleveland's really bad. Yeah, the quarterback's horrendous. Should not be playing. It's embarrassing.
Right.
But stranger things have happened. But I'm interested to see what they can do, because the teams have not. The passing game against Cleveland has not been great. They've been giving up chunks of runs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated to see what this thing looks like, and the return of the wide nine. So we'll see.
All right, great stuff. More on Eagles versus Browns later this week. Obviously, the Friday pod and the Sunday Inside the Birds pregame show with Greg Cosell, and of course, Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell later this week as well. We will really dive into the matchup. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us Inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.